my colleague Gary to just go over to the next slide. So just to let you know who we are and so some of our team are here today. We have a very big team, but with me today you have Gary Palmer, who is the Managing Director for the English Language Division and the Digital Institute. We got Tom with us today, who is the Operation Manager and knows everything about the test we're going to talk to you about. He's been working tirelessly with the developers to create this fantastic test. And it's myself, Linda Sandberg. I'm originally from Sweden, if you wonder where my last name comes from. But I've spent already over 6 years with Oxford International here in the UK. And I'm the Director of Business Development for the Digital Institute. And what we are going to talk to you about today is mainly the English test and also a little bit about our online pre-sessional English. But I just wanted to show you some of the other programs that we have. So the three first, you see that you got the English test, you got the preparation for English test that we're going to also talk to you about a little bit, and the online pre-sessional. We also have a couple of academic courses coming along soon this year. So we got the pre-masters, which is a standalone program, which is accepted by a number of universities. And then we got the pre-PhD preparation course, which we are very excited about and which our university partners are very, very excited about. So I'm not going to dwell much on that today, but if you're interested in any of these courses, then please do talk to your account manager at Oxford International, and they will be happy to set up a session when we can talk about this. We're gonna launch it later this year, so watch that space. And now, before further ado, I will hand over to Gary and Tom, who is going to take you through the English language test. Thank you, guys. Over to you.
Thanks, Linda. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to do a quick overview of the reason why we have this language test and how it came about, and then Tom's going to do a run through of the sort of functionality and some screenshots of how the test works from a student's perspective. So obviously back in last March, there was a growing concern that with a lack of availability of IELTS face-to-face testing, universities and international colleges were going to really struggle with students being able to get proof of language ready to get a conditional offer for September intake, and the impact on the numbers could have been quite damaging. So we already had a language test that was working very well within our language school system. So we looked at adapting it to an online format instead. We initially did this just for our own international colleges, but then word got out of what we were doing with the test itself, and we very quickly started to see new university partners that we've never worked with before coming forward and asking if they could use this service. The reason for this really is that it's 100% online, which is the key point. The students can do this obviously all from the comfort of their own home. They don't need to travel to any centre for any face-to-face element, but it's got very unique elements within the speaking assessment and within the security of each component that we now have. The test, and critically, we launched a second phase in January, which is the test portal, which we're going to show you today, and this has allowed us to expand the volume of students that can come through the test, but also to give a lot more control back to the students in terms of being able to choose their own test times and effectively have 24-hour access to most of the testing components themselves. So the test itself is actually made up of 4 parts. There is a reading and listening component, which are both automated tests. They have security built into them and AI proctoring, which I'll go into a bit later on. There is then a writing task, which differs from most other online assessments because it's very much a read and response type task. They're giving a question, an opinion piece, effectively, they're asked to write an essay-style response to this. This was designed really because obviously for students going into universities or for studying, the EAP component can come out on a much sort of higher level by looking at a response to an essay and the way they construct an essay answer compared to just kind of gap fill or short sentence construction. And then most importantly, the speaking test, which is the most unique component that we have. The speaking test itself is done with a live examiner. So also I think there's a bit of an echo, so if everyone can make sure they're muted, sorry. The speaking test, sorry, is done with a live examiner. This is a face-to-face exam, but most importantly, it's built up in 3 sections, which Tom will talk about in more detail. But it gives the examiner a free-flowing question-answer session with the students, where they not only refer back to the writing task, which the examiner has also marked before the exam, but also any discrepancies in the reading and listening, any red flags that have been raised by the security system within the test itself. And we actually allow up to 1 hour for each speaking assessment. So although it says 20 minutes, that's the recommended guidance for a normal speaking assessment, where the student kind of goes through the process. But we do give a lot of extra time to the examiners to allow them to drill into any areas of uncertainty or where they feel the student can expand further, and help to encourage them to speak more and get a better idea of their level. The way it works is the examiners will write a report summary with results, so that the student ends up with a certificate, but also a written report on their kind of areas of strengths and weaknesses. And this is given as an overall CEFR level, with a breakdown of each component, but the certificate itself does have mapping to IELTS equivalents, to give students some guidance as well. One of the most unique things, and I think one of the reasons why, despite the return to face-to-face testing in some markets, that we are seeing actually a greater uptake in partners accepting the test, is because we have a unique model where partners can actually have their own booking portals for the test. So as an example, the University of Greenwich has a page which is it looks the same as the normal booking portal, but when students click on the link we give to Greenwich students, it tracks them as a Greenwich University students. They can't choose a different university they're applying for. As they go through the test itself, we know where the students have originated from, and on completion of the test at the end, those results are flagged up to the university partner directly, which means the university has control of the next steps of the student's journey. So it's not like they've referred them to a test and they just have to wait for the student to get a certificate and then hope they come back to them. The university themselves will get told when the student completes the test and can then contact the student to give them the next steps for their journey into their intake. With the new portal, we're about to launch the partnership login area, where the universities will also have their own login page. When they log into the portal, they can see students that have registered, they can see students that have completed the exam, but most importantly, the universities can also download certificates and reports. So if they have students who apply to them that haven't come directly through them, they can actually go and check the certificate's valid, they can check the student ID and make sure it's an authentic certificate. They don't have to come and chase the admissions team in Oxford International anymore to do this. And critically, we also do this now for agents. So we're seeing a growing number of agencies now who are using the test either as a recruitment tool or just to help students onwards with their journeys. And agents themselves are coming to us now and asking for bespoke registration pages, which we are creating for them as well. So not just universities, but also for agencies that we can offer this service. And there's no extra cost to this. By accepting the test or using the test, we create the booking portal and the results service all for free. It's growing in acceptance every week. So once again, we've had a couple more universities come forward. As I said, we're seeing a tipping point now with the exam, where before in the summer, we were approaching universities to ask them if they were looking to accept the examination. Since we launched the test portal, and again, we're seeing growing acceptance across more universities, we are seeing universities now approaching us. And this is also being driven by students going to universities with our test certificate, and then universities coming to us to ask for more information about it, to see if they can accept it. So this is a growing pool of universities that we're seeing coming through. And as I said, we're adding to this on a weekly basis. And then most excitingly, and what Tom's going to talk to you about, very much we've designed the portal to take the test forward. It used to be quite an admissions heavy test where there was lots of emailing backwards and forwards with the student to book each component. But now, thanks to the portal's launch, students can book, pay, they can then take the first 3 components and they can book their own speaking assessment slot, all without having to have any communication with somebody by email. They can do it all themselves through the portal. We obviously have a support team behind the scenes, an academic email, a general admissions email that students can get in touch with if they need any help. But the whole purpose of the portal was to give the students greater mobility around taking the test on their own terms. And even the speaking assessment, we used to tell the students, some of you who knew the test is the time they had to attend their speaking assessment. And this caused problems with time zone understandings. Sometimes students would have to reschedule at the last minute. On the new portal, students can log in and they can book their own speaking assessment, and they can also change the time zone to give them full control of when they can do it with most suitability for them. And then I think probably most excitingly from our point of view and from universities' point of views, we've added a long list of security to the test that wasn't there before. So before we relied very heavily on the writing and speaking components that were obviously viewed by an examiner and invigilated, and using the speaking assessment to understand the students' true abilities and reflect back on their original component tests. Now we've added a whole layer of AI security in proctoring. So students have to have their webcam on and microphone throughout the first 2 stages, in fact, all 3 stages, reading, writing, and listening. They have to, the camera will pick up if there's any movement behind them or anyone else joining the screen. So if I was sat here now doing the test and somebody popped up next to me, it would warn them that it's detecting someone else there. And it will also take a screenshot of that moment and put it on the system as a red flag for the examiner to have a look at. The microphone has to be on because it will pick up any background sound if there's someone else speaking in the room. And the one that I particularly like is if the student tries to move the mouse outside of the test area, the exam itself will lock and freeze, and a message will pop up basically saying to the student, "Where are you going? Return to the test." All of these incidents, if they happen, are logged. So as I said, a screenshot is taken and a red flag is raised. So when the examiner logs in to mark the writing assessment, view the other component scores, and then prepare for the speaking assessment, they're also able to view all of the red flag events. And if there's any areas of discrepancy, if they think there's anything particularly wrong, if the screenshots clearly show someone else sat with the student or assisting them, then they're able to either make the student retake a component, or they can raise it, which is more likely during the speaking assessment, and they can ask them further details about how they took the test, how they prepared for the test, and how they actually found answering the questions, including expanding on any topics within the exam itself. So the speaking assessment security, the unique examiner interaction still remains, but by adding in all of this AI proctoring and security, we're able to give a lot more reassurance to universities. And this is why we think we're seeing a kind of rapid increase in the number of university partners that are accepting the exam. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to whiz through what the test looks like from a student's perspective. So Tom, over to you.
Thanks, Gary. Morning, everyone. I'm going to take you through the student journey on the test. We have written a student guidebook that accompanies this journey so that students have a clear instruction manual, essentially, as to what they need to do to register, book, pay, and start their test. The first screen that the student is going to be presented with is the registration screen. Each student creates an account within the portal. This allows us to track their progress, see their results, see when they've booked their speaking times for, and generally monitor the student as they go through the test. They need to fill in their name, email address, they can select their nationality, they can select their institution, and then they need to create a password. If a student is applying through a university and they've already been given a student ID number, they can put that in here. It helps the university track the student when we then send them their results. If a student hasn't received a university ID number, that's not a problem. They can still complete the test without one. As a partner institute, as Gary mentioned, we would create a bespoke registration page, which would mean that the institution would be fixed to your institution or to a specific university. So when students apply, they're automatically tagged as that university going through the process. So everything on the portal or within the portal is automated. And so the students will receive a number of automated emails as they go through the process of the test. The first one is to activate their email. As soon as they've registered an account, they will receive an activation email. This simply just confirms that they've not made any mistakes with their email address and that it is actually them that is applying for the test. They simply need to click on the activate your account and it will redirect them back to the portal to then start the next steps. Once they've activated their email, oh, sorry, can you just, Thank you. Once they've activated their email, they will then receive a welcome email from us and the portal. It's an important email for the students to read. It contains lots of information about the breakdown of the test components, the timings that they need to allow for each test, some information about the ELLT preparation course, which I think Gary's going to come on to at the end of this or later in the presentation. Thank you. So once they are in the test, they will be presented with the dashboard. The dashboard has the 4 components. We've broken the test down into the 4 components so that the students can pick and choose when they start their test, and it allows the students to take the test in the 4 stages rather than having to sit everything all at once. When they first get to this page, the 4 components will actually be locked. Before they can do this, they need to go on to get a license and make a payment. It's a very simple 2-step payment process with our integrated payment page and platform. And as soon as they've made the payment and it's been confirmed, they're automatically redirected back to this page where the reading and listening components will be unlocked. They are the first 2 components that the students have to take. And once they've then taken those, they can book their speaking exam. Once they've booked their speaking exam, they will then be able to take the writing exam. And then the final part of the test is to actually meet with the live examiner to take their speaking exam. But everything is done from this dashboard. It's very simple for the students to see the processes and the steps. Once they've completed the test and their results are ready, there will be a box that appears just under "You have a custom license," which will be a download box for both the certificate and the report. Thank you. So here are 2 screenshots just to give you an idea of some of the test functionality. The first page here, the ELLT writing test, is a sample of the written task. As you can see, on the left is the question, on the right is the answer box. As Gary mentioned, with some of the AI proctoring, you can see in the top corner, the video is being recorded and the student has a preview of what is being recorded so that they can see what's being recorded of them. The actual box here that they put their writing answer into is a fully standalone box. This means that students can't right click, they can't copy and paste. There is obviously no spell check. And as Gary mentioned, with this test and the reading and the listening, if they try to leave the testing window, the pop-up will appear asking them where they're going and to go back to the test. The second picture here is the speaking scheduler. So as Gary mentioned, we now allow students to pick their own time and date slots. The first task they need to do is select their time zone. Before, we would always give them the times in UK times, as that's where we were doing the test from, but it caused some confusion with students as to calculate the time from UK to their local time zone. Sometimes they would get the hour wrong. Now, student can go in, select their own time zone, select the date and time they wish to take the exam, and then confirm. We update the availability every week, so there will always be at least 2 or 3 days advance availability for the student to pick from. This is another one of the emails that the students receive once they have booked their speaking test. This is probably the most important email that the student needs to look out for. Number 1, confirming the date and time in the time zone that they selected of their interview. Point number 2 is the Zoom link. So we are still using Zoom for all our meetings. Zoom is an excellent platform to for students to hold a steady, stable internet connection with low bandwidth. So even for students in remote areas of the world where maybe the internet connections aren't as stable, this will allow the student and the examiner to connect in a stable platform for them to be able to complete their interview. Section 3 here, or point 3, sorry, is some general cancellation policy. As Gary mentioned, there is a team working behind the scenes. So if the student has got any questions or does need to reschedule or need to cancel for a specific reason, they can email by replying to this email and they can get in touch with myself or one of our team. Point 4 here is a download to Zoom. We suggest that students do download the Zoom app to take the test on. If they don't want to download the app, they can actually access Zoom via the browser. As with all of the components of the test, the students will need a government issued ID, and it needs to be the same one that they used in their listening, reading and writing test. This will be checked by the examiner at the beginning. And point 5, the most important point, for the speaking test, there is a presentation task that the students have to prepare. This is attached to this email, so the students need to make sure they read the email and scroll to the bottom of the page to see the attachment. Lots of information in this email, it's a very important one. So here is an example of the writing test. All our writing tests are 1 hour opinion-based essays. Students need to write between 150 and 200 words. There is always a question followed with a kind of a paragraph of information that the students can think about to answer their question. None of our questions are factual questions. They don't need to know any facts and figures to be able to get the answer right. They are all opinion-based. So, you know, we get some very interesting answers based on students' opinions from around the world on different topics. Here is a sample of the presentation task that I just mentioned. The spoken assessment is broken down into 3 different stages. The first stage is an introduction and an ID check. This is just to ensure that the students have got their Zoom working and that the examiner is happy that it is the correct student taking the exam and it's the same one that took the reading, listening and writing components. Stage 2 is the short presentation task. This is a 3 to 5 minute verbal presentation, and you can see in the box there is the presentation topic that the student would have had to prepare. Normally, students don't need to spend more than kind of half an hour preparing this topic. It's a good way for the examiner to be able to see their English language level. As Gary mentioned, stage 3 is probably the most important part of the speaking exam. It is a question and answer session regarding the written task and also the reading and listening task. This is a really good way for the examiner to delve into the students' kind of language ability and really coax out more of their language than maybe they would have given in stage 2, the presentation. Some students are very nervous giving a presentation, so their language ability may not have come across overly high in that stage, but in stage 3, in a question and answer scenario, more of a conversation scenario where the student can relax and just speak with the examiner, we normally find that there the real level comes out. So it's a really important task, a really important stage of the speaking exam for the student to show off their true ability. And I think I'm going to hand over to Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm just going to quickly run through sort of the criteria and the moderation. I won't go on too long. There's a lot of documentation around this, which, you know, we're more than happy to share with people afterwards. But I think this is more important from the partners that accept it perspective. The questions themselves for the writing and speaking are drawn from a bank of over 70 questions that we are constantly updating. So the back end material is always being refreshed. And obviously we draw from a list of topics that we do think students are used to studying, you know, within their normal English language lessons. There's nothing controversial or sort of rather than any cultural sensitivities. It is all bespoke and made in-house by our academic team. And like I said, this is moderated throughout. All of the documentation, so once the examiner has actually logged in to finish their report and certificate, before it goes to the student, everything goes to our senior academic team for one last review. So there's almost like a second safety check just to make sure everything is correct, to look for any discrepancies. The senior academic team will also check on a weekly basis a random sample of exams. So they're able to look for, again, anything they think is perhaps being marked in a wrong way or anything's a bit too unfair to a student. If there have been any appeals from students that are flagging up the same problem on a particular question. But it's only when the senior academic team mark the test as complete that the result is actually available to the student. So this often allows us to, you know, we very rarely see sort of any appeals getting changed because it's already been through 2 different panels to check their answers. I would say on that though, even though it does go through 2 checks, we are more than likely to get results out for students 24 hours after they finish their speaking. We publicly state on the website that it's 48 hours, just in case there's any red flags or issues that we need to contact the student about. But actually most of the time it's 24 hours following the speaking assessment itself. We do hold weekly meetings with all the examiners, again, to bring forward any issues, to talk about best practice, but also where the academic team will introduce any new material that the examiners won't have seen before. And just to show you, because obviously the two first components are automated response exams, the reading and listening are very much percentage corrections, mapped to CEFR and IELTS equivalent. Students do have access to this information before they take the test. They know what they're aiming towards. The writing and the speaking being more examiner opinion-based criteria shows you the breakdown here of what they're looking for. Again, it's shared with the students in advance, so they know the kind of areas that they're trying to aim towards. It shows our own internal scoring mechanism, but it also shows how those components break down against IELTS equivalents as well. So this is the writing one, and again, similar one for the speaking in terms of the attributes we're looking for the students. As I mentioned, they receive a copy of their results up to 48 hours. They do receive a certificate of their level. This is obviously the most important part of the university. The only bit they really care about is it has the 4 components on it and it has an overall CEFR. But again, something that's quite unique with our exam, which is very helpful for students. And this is particularly important where students are looking at doing a pre-sessional course or some kind of foundation course before they actually go on to a full degree, is they get a written report, which is written by the examiner. So the examiner will comment on all 4 components. It's not from a bank of answers, it's very much the examiner's opinions of the student's abilities. And it will refer to any areas of weakness or strength and give the students some ideas on things they should be going to work on in specific areas. And as I said, this is particularly helpful for students who are perhaps not at the level they need. They know that, so they're doing the test as a kind of assessment of what they need to be working on, or where they're going on to a pre-sessional course, and that report can actually go to the teacher to give the teacher a bit of a head start in terms of where the student's ability is and what they need to set them bespoke work on. As we mentioned, as a partner institution, whether it's an agency or a university, they'll also receive a copy of the student's results, as well as the availability to the portal to log in themselves and download certificates and reports. Here's just an example of certificates. You can see what it looks like. You can see critically in the top corner is the student's name, candidate number and the date. The candidate number is important because if any, we do have students obviously using this directly to then apply to a university. So for example, if Greenwich haven't given their private link to a student, but the student's chosen Greenwich from the drop-down list at the beginning, because that's where they want to apply to, sometimes the university admissions team will come to us and say, we just had an application from Tom Daughtry, he's not on our list of students that applied, can you verify that the student is an authentic certificate? And then we can obviously check the candidate number and look on the system. And again, we can check the ID against the student that's applied with the university. Now universities can do that themselves. They don't need to come to us to ask for that information. And as you can see, the mapping on there as well with the breakdown of levels. And then this is just an example of the report. It's a bit tiny to be able to read it, but I think you can see there's comments on all 4 components and then an overall general comment as well for the student. And then we have 2 supporting courses for this. Now, obviously as a new exam, a lot of students do ask us if there's any material they can see in advance. We do have example questions. The student guide that Tom referred to is a very in-depth step-by-step guide for students that includes example questions as well. So we'll share that with you after this course, you can see it. But most universities send the student guide out to new applicants as well. So it's very much a step-by-step explanation. And for most students who are taking the exam, that's enough information. But where a student is particularly nervous, or perhaps they are very much on the cusp of getting the level they need, they want a bit more assurance and support, we do run a preparation course on a weekly basis. This runs on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's 3 sessions, so 1 per day, 1 hour each day. I'm focusing on a component separately. So the idea really is that a student can start the preparation course on a Monday, they'll finish it on a Wednesday, then they'll take the exam and then they'll get the results. So within 7 days of starting the prep course, they'll have gone through the whole process and got the results 7 days later. It's quite a popular prep course. We probably have 1 or 2 cohorts running every week now. They're taught in small groups, so it's not an individual course, but it's very much a way of helping them with strategies for the exam, exposing them to the material in advance, and giving them some examples of, good answers, bad answers, and sort of things you can work on in between. On top of this, though, more of a higher level and more of a premium course is we have a skills booster course. Now, this crosses over more into our higher education courses as well. But we do see a lot of students using the skills booster course now alongside the exam. This is much more of an intensive course. It's a one-to-one tuition course that runs for 15 hours. So it's Monday to Friday, an hour per day. The student has a one-to-one tutor, and it's very much where the student tells us which skill they're particularly worried about. So we do find some students have a particular weakness area, normally in the productive skills around speaking and writing. And what this does is it gives them 15 hours of direct support. Not only do they have the hourly classes, they also have access to our virtual learning campus, where we give them self-guided study as well. So an enormous amount of work and support for them to go into. The skills booster course within that price, though, does also include the preparation course I just showed you and the test itself. So the tutor that's assigned to the student will also guide them through the prep course. They keep having their one-to-one lessons at the same time, and they'll be there to support them as they take each stage of the test. So it's very much a hand-holding course for students that are particularly concerned, or like I said, where they have one skill that they know is not going to get to the level they require. There is an email address here. If you've got any questions, if you've got anything directly that you'd like to ask us, you can email info@oietc.com. But I think on that note, I'm going to hand over to Linda, who's going to talk to you about the online pre-sessional courses.
Thank you so much, Gary and Tom. So before we go on to the questions that you have put in the chat box about the test, I'll just run through a few slides here talking about our online pre-sessional English course. If I can have it. Perfect. So this is a standalone English pre-sessional course, and you have 6, 12 or 16 weeks to work with, and they have a rolling start date throughout the academic year. And this standalone English pre-sessional is approved by a range of universities. And to name a few good names, you got University of Birmingham, you got University of Leeds, University of Strathclyde, and Coventry. The full list I will show you a little bit later. You can, this is the same as the English test. When it comes to universities who are approving this course, they normally go hand in hand with the test. So just watch we're going to give you the website later so you can see the full list of the universities, and keep an eye on that as it's going to grow all the time. What is important here is that our online English language courses are accredited by the British Council and also by NEAS. And interestingly, and very lovely, is that we received recently an award for the highest quality service that has benefited the ELT community by NEAS, which was amazing. And perhaps if I can get Gary back, Gary, can you tell me a little bit about the NEAS, the award we got?
Yes, it was accredited to NEAS, is the Australian equivalent of the British Council. So effectively, they approve at an academic level that it is a viable course to be used within Australian universities. They have their annual general meeting every May, which they normally give awards out in the industry's problems that it's been having. They created a new award, which was for a specific service that had been created that had a positive impact for the English language community or helped partners, and they selected our pre-sessional products for that award.
Thank you, Gary. And so this is a 100% online course. It is mixed of live lessons, self-guided learning, and rolling assessment. So it's important to understand that this is when universities are approving this course, it's a rolling assessment. It's not only that it's an English course that you take an other English exam at the end. It's very much a rolling assessment. So we look at various parts of the course and students' performance. It's because we have 6 weeks, we've got 12 weeks, and we've got 16 weeks, and it's really to offer different entry points of IELTS equivalences for students, and depending on what exam. So what we will do is we will consult with the students and make a suggestion which of these courses they need to take and when we have a start date. But we got, as we said, we got rolling start dates throughout the year. And there is, for example, a 6-week course starting every 3rd week. Something that the universities are very happy with, who we work with, is the progression rate, which has been as high as 95% as of last year. And this is very much due to the support we give to the students throughout their course. We got different points during the course when we look at the students' performance, and we can pick up students who are a little bit low. And we also give them a reset opportunity at the end. Exactly. And something also, so basically when it comes to the pricing, is very pricing amongst other products out there, and it has a very beneficial commission scheme. And this part I will leave to your account manager to discuss with you at a later stage. Gary, if I can have the next slide. And similarly, as we work with the English test, is that you can actually have your own private landing page and booking portal. And this makes it very easy for you to book students into this. You can see which universities have approved it. And when you direct this link to your students, the student go on and book directly on that page, and they will be tagged as your student. And we can also set up a workflow, how you would like to receive updates about the students, if you like to receive any updates during the course, and or how many students you have had on the course and how they are doing. And also the end results, we can send it directly to you if you wish, or directly to you and the students. We can set up these workflows with you. So this is really allowing partners to have confidence and controlling the next stages of the admissions journey for the students. So you do not need to keep chasing us for updates about the students, or chasing the students, which we all know can be a bit complicated. You will have full control, and this is actually showing a great increase in conversion rate when it comes to our agents applicants. As we have, so the students, so just to go back again, how it looks for the students, they will be sent the link from you or from us where to book, and they can choose the course length and the starting date, and so they can do all that booking on the website. They will see the time zones. So how we also run the course, it has 1.5 to 2 hours of teaching a day, Monday to Friday, and we arrange this in a time zone which is or timetable according to their time zone, which is beneficial for them. For example, if they are having other commitments, maybe they are studying or they are working, then we can arrange that they can take a timetable not suitable for them. We also have some add-on support courses, which can be very beneficial for students who might be a little bit low in one component, for example. So we can add on one intensive tutorial lessons, and it's a bit similar to the booster program that Gary talked about. So making sure that we really set up a program for the students to be successful. And when the students come on to one of these courses, they will be given an Oxford International email address, and with this comes access to webmail, their Microsoft Office 365 license. They get access to Teams and all the classroom environment that we have on Teams, and also access to our virtual learning campus, which is a great source for further studies for them, and will be a great help for them during the course and for the future. And we'll give them obviously a good welcome pack where they see all the details. If I can have the next slide. So this is a little bit how it will look like. So you can see the booking form here, and this we can co-brand with you, with your agent, and they will then see on the next tile here, you see course structure, and they see a bit of an explanation. But as I said, we will most probably have undergone some kind of consultation with you and your students so they would know which course to take and which start date to choose. And again, they will of course receive a certificate upon completion, and this is mapped to the CRFR level and also to IELTS. And they will also receive a full written report, which we are going to send through to you, so you can use that when the student is enrolling at university. So again, you will then receive the certificate and the written report, so you can have full control over the next stages of the student journey. And here, this is the same slide as we have for the ELLT test. So at the moment, we have about 15, 16 universities. However, we have about 12 of the other universities waiting to get this approved. They're just doing the last steps of their due diligence process. So you can expect this list to keep on growing to make sure that this is a very attractive product for you to promote out in the market. And that is finishing the slides. So again, any questions whatsoever you have about this, you can of course always turn first to your account manager, and then we can set up a meeting to talk more in depth about this with the team. So next slide. Now, what I would like to tell you to end the presentation before we go on to the Q&As is that we would be very happy to give you 2 free tests of the ELLT tests for your applicants that you have for our own pathway colleges. So you got Bangor University International College, you got the Montfort University International College, University of Greenwich International College, and the International College at Dundee. So 2 free tests per agent. We would be very happy to pass on to you. And to get more information about that, you should speak to your account manager. So with this, Jessica, I think we can start Q&A.
Thank you, Linda. I think we've answered most of them during the presentation on the chat. There was some questions asked, but Gary, if I can ask, how long is the ELLT test result valid?
It's for 18 months.
18 month.
Yeah, 18.
Perfect. Thank you. That was the only question we weren't able to answer. So Stephanie, if I can hand it over to you for the wrap. Sorry, one more question. If possible, if we could tell them about the examiners. For examiners, are they based in countries across the world? How are they recruited? How much training do they go through before becoming an examiner, Gary?
So all of the examiners are from within our English language schools network. So they're either employed within our 3 language schools in the UK or in North America. Obviously, one of the joys of the English language team here is we've got our 4 schools in North America as well. So we have quite a nice spread of time zones. I think that's been one of the most important things for the new system where students can book their own tests, because now the examiners actually put their own availability across, which means we've now got basically round-the-clock examining going on, which is quite exciting. We also recruit from within our seasonal staff. So as you probably, some of you might not be aware, we run a huge seasonal programs with our junior and adult courses, up to 30,000 students a year that come through us. So we have a long list of academic staff around the world who either work with us for Easters and summers or winter programs, but are all fully qualified, obviously to the levels that we expect them to have. So we have a minimum requirement for all of our examiners, which I'm happy to share with you following this presentation. They go through a full induction process and moderation process, as we said, on a weekly basis. They are based, the majority of them are in country within the UK or North America. However, because we also work with our seasonal staff, some of these do also work abroad. So we do have people sort of scattered around the world. But I think the most important thing from that is it's the minimum requirements of experience and qualification that we have set to our examiners, and the moderation within their work that comes through. I think, Tom, if I'm right, they have to do a series of moderation events before they actually are licensed to be an examiner with us. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. There is a full standardization process that each examiner has to go through with our academic team before they can actually start examining. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I think for some of the agents, I get a lot of messages on the chat privately saying that if ELLT is part of OIEG, I think it's confusing to some of them about our structure. So if I may, or Gary, would you mind doing the OIEG division part, English division, and the university partners?
Yes. Yeah. So obviously we've got 4 divisions. We have a 4th one as of last year, which is quite exciting. So we have our university partnerships. We have our schools and colleges division, which obviously has our boarding schools, international schools in Oxford. We also have our English language division, which is split across the UK and North America. So we operate 7 year-round language schools. So 2 in the US, 2 in Canada, and 3 in England. They do a range of everything from, English for general use, vocational English, exam preparation courses, but are more for general English students coming over to travel on sort of shorter courses. And within the English language schools division, we also have our Oxford International junior programs. We are the largest junior program provision operator in the UK. And we have upwards of 20,000 students that come through on a normal year, that would be, with our Easter and summer programs. And then our 4th division is this fantastic new division you're seeing here, which is the Digital Institute. So we already had quite a lot of online programs running, but because the Digital Institute courses cross all boundaries of our different divisions, we have university courses, we have English language courses, we have schools and colleges courses. We decided that we'd have it as its own division. So all of our online offerings, anything that's 100% online, comes through this division now. And it allows us to act as a service department, so we can mobilize a lot of the courses that you'll see in a traditional face-to-face setting can now be delivered online through our digital area.
Thank you. And if I can add one more thing, ELLT test is accepted by our partner universities that's been shared on the slides, and the Oxford International University Partnership. That ELLT test can be accepted. I think that's one of the distinguishing selling points for our pathway programs, because our pathway programs are embedded college, and it's called HEI, and our CASs are issued by HEI. We are in a position to accept ELLT as a higher education institutions. So we have the authority to self-assess students' language proficiency where they have achieved B2 and above. So this is a great opportunity for our pathway students, as well as those who want to take an ELLT test for those partner universities as well. So yes, I think that's it. And if I can hand it over to Stephanie for the wrap up, please.
Hi, thank you. Well, this session has been very, very informative. Thank you, team. Thank you, Linda, Tom, Gary, and Jessica for putting this together. So just a few things I'd like to recap on today's webinar, as in Jessica has covered that this assessment can be used for visa purposes if the student meets the English language entry requirements. This can also match with the online professional English course if the student sits this test, but their results don't meet the entry requirements to their course. It's very easy to book and easy access for the students, and the students can sit this test anytime that suits their schedule. For the first 2 parts, and of course the results are back very quickly. So thank you so much for joining today's webinar, and hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, please be in touch with your account manager. So we've got our whole team for Southeast and Northeast Asia over here, and I'm sure you already know your account manager, and have a great the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
I think this brings
Bye.
us to the end of this webinar. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.